Welcome into the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson for our midweek mailbag edition. I got to say, you guys are lighting up the email inbox so far. Sam has a big smirk on his face.
Well, we're liking the mailbag weekly episode anyway. You know, it's becoming a fun episode. It's becoming even more fun because entirely off their own back, the listeners are embracing the idea that all of the email comes to me and none of it comes to you.
I find it hard to believe now after last week.
After begging them pitifully.
I did not beg last
You
week.
did.
I merely requested my fans to come out and offer some support.
And they didn't.
We did not get any emails.
What actually happened?
I did not receive any emails.
No, what actually happened is
me.
they redoubled their efforts in sending email to me and not to you.
No, I don't want to hear it because Taylor over here handles all of the podcast email, and I think you guys are in cahoots, and I don't think any email that was addressed to me actually made it through the filter.
I honestly kind of wish that I'd arranged all this now, but it's somehow a lot funnier that I haven't, and it's the people. It's the listeners doing all of this work, and I'm not doing any of it.
No, it's your damn extended family emailing us is what it is.
Honestly, it would be funny if it was. And
There's no
it
way
isn't.
all of the questions have come from overseas or from people that like you. There's no way our listeners are that,
Not one of these
shallow-minded.
Not one of these emails.
No offense to our overseas listeners again. I like our overseas listeners.
Not one of these emails have I doctored and or solicited in any way other than suggesting it's funny that I get them and you don't.
I just don't believe it. So I don't know if you guys are going to come clean at some point, but the point is every email that got forwarded to me this week somehow addressed Sam and addressed his voice and his greatness and all this stuff, and this is what you printed out for us to read and go with. So.
I copied all the emails that were sent to me, bar one, onto this sheet.
All right.
And the one that I didn't was because we read it out. We read out a question from that guy already, and the question this time was silly. So unlucky.
This was shaping up to be my favorite episode every single week, but now it's getting a little ridiculous.
Now it's just chipping away at your self-confidence. Is that what you're saying?
I asked for a little bit of support last week, and apparently you guys won't let me see it.
I saw no support. That's all I'm saying.
Let's get into your questions. You guys can always hit us up at podcasts@profootballfocus.com. That's multiple podcasts. Like I said, we are getting a lot of emails, some of which maybe didn't get through, but the ones that did get through, some more good questions, even if addressed to Sam. Right into this Navy offense one, right?
Yeah.
Is there any reason why some version of Navy's offense wouldn't work in the NFL? Everyone says there are not enough elite quarterbacks to go around, but there are plenty of running quarterbacks. If you were one of the many teams without an elite quarterback, why not design an offense with almost no passing game? That way you could pick from a different pool of players and would put defenses at a disadvantage because you could take their expensive cornerbacks off the field and replace them with backup linebackers. This would seem to make even more sense now that defenses only have 2 starting linebackers since they play so much in sub-packages. That's from Eric.
So this is something I've thought about before several times. I think there's a few reasons it doesn't happen in the NFL. One, you would require some crazy job security to even give it a shot. Like if you're an NFL coach, if you're the guy that comes up with this idea and says, right, we're running triple option next year, this is how we're going to win games.
After, you finally got your shot.
Yeah.
You either finally got your shot to coach, and you're just going to whip it out.
It's almost certainly not working year one. So you're going to have, an 0-16 kind of record to deal with. You got to get through that. I just don't see anyone having the job security enough to pull that off. And anyone that does have that job security already has a system or the way they play, and they're not giving it a shot. The other reason is the CBA. I mean, you don't have enough practice time to block properly regular style, let alone teach an entire offense how to run the triple option and all the various permutations that has and where you need to go and how you need to run, all this sort of stuff. You just don't have the practice time to get that down.
No, that's a good point. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is in a league that has made it so easy to pass over the last few years, I'm not going to go to the run game. And even the best Navy teams and Georgia Tech teams that run the triple option, there are points where you just have to be so good. You have to put together 14, 15 play drives, and you have to execute nonstop. It really does take away a lot of the big play elements. They'll have games where they'll bust out some big runs and stuff like that, but you have to execute very well over and over
That's
again.
the word. So that offense is designed to offset an athletic advantage that everybody else has. It's usually run by military academies because they can't get the best athletes because the best athletes aren't going to military academies.
Right.
So they have to run something that will out-scheme a team that is superior athletically all of the time because that's what they're going up against. So you don't see Alabama run the triple option because they don't need to. They've got the athletes everywhere. So it is an offense where you need to execute perfectly every single time, and if you can do that in the NFL, you don't need the triple option. So it's just not a great fit. What I do think is a legitimate point, though, is you have a lot of flawed athletic quarterbacks in college that can only do a certain amount of things when it comes to the passing game. And so a lot of this is the read option stuff that we've seen more in the NFL, and there used to be none of that because you didn't want to expose your quarterback to those kind of hits. But now, if you can't get an Aaron Rodgers, you could get 3 of these athletic, limited quarterbacks, cut down what you're expecting to do in the passing game, ramp up their running threat in the read option, and use more option-based running plays. And it doesn't matter that they're exposed to more hits because you have 3 of them.
If you have 3 of them, right? If you've got, Joe Webb is on this team no matter what.
Exactly. So Joe Webb, do you remember Reggie McNeil from Texas A&M ran a 4.3?
Yeah.
Get 3 of those guys, stack your roster full of them, and then it doesn't matter that you're exposing them to big hits because you just go to the next guy.
So before we get, I want to follow up on that real quick, but before we get into that, at the NFL level, here's the other thing too. When you're running the option, you're optioning off of someone. And everybody's like, well, NFL athletes, you can't do that. There is an element to that where NFL athletes are so good that they can cover both parts of the mesh sometimes. We saw that with Myles Garrett in a clip that I posted on Twitter last year where he is being optioned off of, which on the chalkboard, you're saying, here's the best player. We're going to option off of him. We don't even have to block their best player. We'll just do we'll do the opposite of whatever he does. But sometimes he just runs up to the mesh point and says, I'm going to play the running back and I'm going to play the quarterback. And I'm athletic enough to do it. There are so many athletic NFL.
I remember Michael Johnson tackling both parts of the option.
Right.
They split the mesh. One of them had the ball, and he had one arm on the quarterback and one arm on the running back, and stopped both of them.
Yeah, there's too many freak athletes in the NFL for that. What you brought up though was a pretty good point, and Zach and I talked about this on the quarterback episode. Was if you throw most quarterbacks in the NFL into this just middle tier, where you have to accentuate their strengths and figure out a way to get Andy Dalton to be productive and Kirk Cousins to be productive and Marcus Mariota the way he is right now to be productive. I think you have to steal, I call it stealing plays, right? So Marcus Mariota is athletic, so you could add some option elements to take advantage for him. Andy Dalton has some running skills, so you steal some elements, you steal some RPOs and stuff like that. I feel like you were kind of getting to the same thing when with what you have. If what you have is a guy that's a very good runner and an inaccurate passer, how many plays can you steal, and then you mitigate that by having a comparable guy behind him ready to take the hits if that first guy gets hurt.
I mean, the big thing about there's a series of NFL quarterbacks that are very limited pocket passers and can't do everything that an NFL offense. They can't beat Peyton Manning in the pocket. Never going to happen.
Right.
They'll never get to that. But they can do things athletically that Peyton Manning couldn't even dream of. So now typically that hasn't been an awful lot of use to you in the NFL because you can't run those things and expose them to the hits because you're paying these guys $20 million a season and you can't take that kind of risk that you lose this guy. But if you work on the basis that at that level of passing, it's quite easy to get those guys. I don't have to find another Peyton Manning. I just need to find another athletic college quarterback that has limited passing skills. Those guys are a lot easier to find. Now
this is called Tim Tebow.
Kind of. The trick is going to be, can you somehow break the false economy of just you're the starting NFL quarterback, therefore give me my $20 million?
Well, then
because you need to find a way of paying those guys nothing, otherwise it doesn't work.
Well, if you do have 3 guys that are cheap and somewhat interchangeable, then you're loading up on your roster elsewhere, and it's that whole once the Ravens had to pay Joe Flacco, it was a lot harder for them to build their roster because he was making $20 million, when guys weren't making $20 million at the time.
Yeah, but you do get this weird NFL economy with quarterbacks where it's, look, I'm now your starter, therefore I'm getting a $100 million contract.
Oh, I know.
Otherwise
I get
I'm
it.
out of here.
I was saying a couple of years ago, why would the NFL, this isn't really collusion, but why can't the NFL properly evaluate Andy Dalton and say, okay, let's say the Rodgers, Brady's, Lux, and those guys are in they're worth $20 million, give or take. And somebody just looks at Andy Dalton and says, you're 8.
Yeah.
And that's it. And just your Andy Daltons, your Ryan Tannehills, and your mid-tier guys are 8. But that's just not
doesn't work
the way it.
And that's the thing. That's the kind of flaw with this is that you can get those 3 athletic quarterbacks, but if one of them says, "Well, I need the $20 million contract, otherwise I'm out of here," then it doesn't work.
A lot of Navy talk here so far in the PFF podcast. This next question, I like it right up my alley. Context for grades and negative graded touchdowns. Huge fan of the PFF podcast, gentlemen. How would Ben Roethlisberger's grade be affected by the fourth quarter touchdown throw to Antonio Brown? Now, if you guys didn't see this throw, it was essentially a pass directly to Terrence Mitchell.
Philip Gaines. Hit him in the face, ricocheted to Antonio Brown, who plucked it out of the air one-handed, made Daniel Sorensen miss again, which must have been like the 58th time that happened that game, and then took off down the sideline, ran in the length for a touchdown.
To finish the email, on one hand, he threw a ball into heavy traffic, and the pass was turnover worthy. On the other hand, if he does anything else on that play, the Steelers likely don't go up by 2 scores right there, or maybe at all. Since it was a crucial scoring play, would that partially cancel out the negative marks the throw had? As far as a quick answer, no, because we're evaluating what a guy did on that play, and I think the context there is Ben Roethlisberger threw a pass that's probably a minus 1.5 in our system, which is a minus 1.5 throw. I ran the numbers recently, is intercepted 65% of the time. So if you're going to throw a pass that has a 65% chance of being intercepted, I don't care what the result is, you threw a bad pass, and it doesn't change anything for Ben Roethlisberger. I also don't want to diminish what Antonio Brown did because they highlighted it on the broadcast. The way he caught and sidestepped the defender, it was an incredible play. But it absolutely cannot change Ben Roethlisberger's grade in what we're trying to do. And the context there is, hey, Ben Roethlisberger is one of 3 quarterbacks probably to have a completion on a minus 1.5 throw this year, and the only one to have a 60-yard touchdown or whatever it was.
You spent all last week putting me on the spot, so I'm going to do it to you. Do you remember what down that was on?
It was like second, right?
Yeah, so it wasn't do or die play. They're not punting if they don't get that play, because that would be the only thing that would make it interesting.
But if you're in the lead, it's never a do or die play anyway. Now look, there are times in our grading, in our scale, not every pass that is thrown directly to a cornerback is going to get a -1 or is going to get the turnover worthy label. If it's fourth down and you literally do have to make a play.
That's where I was getting at that.
Okay. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, you can go with it. I was just saying that's where I was going with that, is if there is a situation where you have to make something happen, you've got to get the ball out. The difference with this one, though, is that, I mean, even if that was a situation where he has to make an attempt, that throw was there. He just missed it.
That's a good point.
He was behind. He hit the guy in the face who should have picked it off. I mean, it's not a case of, there was nowhere to go with the ball and he just took a shot somewhere, because the ball had to go somewhere. He had a window. He had a shot to take, and he just missed the pass.
And whether he had a window or not, they're the team that was up, trying to run out the clock, and throwing a ball to the cornerback is never a good play there.
Yeah, usually not good.
So, look, it's a great question. I like it. I call it a turnover-worthy touchdown. Absolutely should have been an interception. It was a bad throw. But, again, the context is there. There's been like 3 or 4 passes completed that we've given minus 1.5s to so far this season. So that's it, so we can quantify just how lucky it was.
Yep.
Very. Do I have to read this next one?
You do, yeah.
Oh, jeez. It's a lot. It's too much. I'll just jump to the middle.
No, you have to read the start of it. That's the best part.
Where's he
Because the actual idea is terrible.
Oh. Is that why you put it on the list?
Oh, yeah.
The terrible idea.
Yes.
Dear Sam and Steve, I'm a big fan of the podcast and the dulcet tones of broadcasting legend Sam Monson. I swear, this has to be a cousin. Who is Nick Edwards? That is a generic made-up name that you emailed.
Nothing to do with me.
Broadcasting legend Sam Monson, and
Apparently.
as a British NFL fan, I thought I'd increase the proportion of foreigners emailing the show. We always appreciate that. My idea for how to improve special teams performance may sound like a tough skill to master, but with punters and long snappers having so much of their time dedicated to 1 or 2 very specific skills, then they have no excuse for not attempting to perfect this art. The idea is that rather than catching the snap and launching the ball downfield, punters volley the ball directly from the snap without touching it, without it touching their hands.
So he's talking about volleying the long snap. The punter stands there ready to boot the ball downfield and attempts to just connect on the fly with the long snap as it comes back. That would be the single least likely play to ever come off in sports. Not just football, sports. Like, that would be less likely to occur than a Hail Mary being completed.
What is he doing?
The punter is standing back in his regular, punting position, but instead of catching the long snap, dropping it onto his foot and hoofing it in the air, he is attempting to just volley the ball on the fly as it comes back from the long snapper.
Kick it. Yeah. He's just going to kick
in the air.
The long snap that gets
like
there
a baseball pitch.
0.7.
His foot is now the baseball bat, and he is connecting with the pitch or long snap as it comes back without catching it out of the air.
Why would he do that?
To cut down on the amount of time, the snap to touch time, so it's never going to get blocked. I mean, it's never going to go anywhere because it's going to slice off his foot and hit him in the face, but it's not going to get blocked.
It's a terrible idea.
Isn't it?
So this guy who's a huge fan of yours came up with one of the worst ideas I've
ever heard.
That's from Nick Edwards?
Yes. From Yorkshire.
Yorkshire?
Yeah.
England. Yorkshire.
Yeah. Don't say Shire.
Yorkshire.
No.
Well, that's like, I'm from Massachusetts, so if you say Worcester, it's
no,
Worcester.
No.
It's welcome to Worcester.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nick Edwards, we do appreciate you.
This next one kind of acknowledges you.
Hi, Sam. This is just a big scam. This whole episode is under review. I want this whole episode under review.
Hi, Sam, and in brackets, and Steve. See?
It's in parentheses for those who are, American.
That's what brackets are.
Parentheses.
Brackets
whatever. Are straight.
Straight?
They're straight lines.
The little square ones?
What do you call... I'm going to draw this out. What do you call a bracket that is like this? That is square.
Yeah, the square
straight
ones.
line, straight line, straight line versus this. That's a bracket. That is a parenthesis. This is bad radio because I'm just pointing out.
Yeah, this is terrible radio.
Pictures to you.
Well, I would call them both brackets. I don't differentiate between the two, and I've never had the need to use the square ones.
They both do different things. They completely change the order of operations in math. I mean, this is...
Yeah, well, that's where you're different. I haven't done math since I was like 15.
All right. Could a change to the rules help O-line/quarterback play? A modest proposal would be to liberalize the holding rule to encourage an even broader hug technique, while a more crazy proposal would be to outlaw the three-point stance. Liberalizing holding, let's get into that, or encourage the hug technique, would also benefit the reducing holding calls generally, which seem to be one of the most frustrating gaps in why did they call this for Team X, not Team Y, every single week. In addition to giving more balance back to the O-line, this would take a lot of control of outcomes away from refs and speed up the game.
Speaking of bad radio, by the way, you're aware that nobody can see you do this, your inverted commas, your, I don't know what's the technical English term for those?
Air quotes.
Air quotes, there you go. Nobody can see you do your air quotes.
They can't see the air quotes
when you do hug technique.
You can but the way I accentuate it.
Oh, you think that's like an audible air quotes?
My fans can.
My favorite part about this email, by the way, is how he signs off by saying, "Apologies, I don't have an MS Paint visualization for either of these. It's a deep regret."
That is good.
That is good.
And it would help me visualize this a little bit more.
I do like this, though.
The no three-point stance rule, he just gets into...
Yeah, I'm not wild about that. I like the hug thing. I like the liberalizing holding because I think that holds up. I mean, the NFL has changed blocking in the past. When we did Super Bowl I, when I went back and graded Super Bowl I, the Kansas City Chiefs against the Green Bay Packers back in 1960, whatever it was, you couldn't use your hands to block. I mean, literally, it was in the rules that you had to block with your elbows. So these guys were...
So insane.
It was ridiculous. I don't understand how people ever got blocked in that. They would drop back, regular...
all the defensive linemen, like 95s in the system? And
yes. So you get like Buck Buchanan, who was a Hall of Famer, because nobody was actually allowed to block him. They just had to run at him with their elbows like this.
I used Buck Buchanan as a DeForest Buckner comp.
Oh, yeah?
After watching that game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not a bad one,
That's
actually.
pretty good, right?
Yeah. But so you literally had to have your elbows... like, I don't know, hands up at your shoulders so that the
also,
elbow pointed out in front.
See you.
That's why I'm describing it,
Thank you.
Hands up at your shoulders, elbows out in front of you, and you basically had to catch the defensive lineman between your elbows and attempt to block him. And like running at a guy like this, attempting to block him when he's Buck Buchanan or Henry Jordan or any of the other defensive linemen in that game.
Show me again for the
was
Instagram
just
account.
Never likely to happen. So if the NFL is willing to change it from this to actual blocking, hands out in front, the only difference between that and what this guy is suggesting is that instead of you're allowed to hold as long as your hands are within the frame of the body, let's let him hold on the outside a little bit as well. What's the difference?
Yeah. Why are we doing this?
Because offensive linemen can't block anymore. You've got an offensive line problem in the NFL. That's not going away. So let's help them out a bit.
I'm not changing the rules just because they're bad at blocking right now.
Why not? If we get to the point where it's breaking quarterbacks every week, the NFL can't have that. They got to fix it.
No, the NFL does not need to be. They don't need any more offense. They don't need any. They don't need to be even more offensive centric.
Put it this way,
right? Flags in 12 years.
Put it this way: would you prefer that to this kind of flag footballization of quarterback play, where you just can't touch the quarterbacks anymore because you might break them? How about instead of that, you can hit the guy if you get there, but we're going to make it harder for you to get there?
No, because I don't want quarterbacks getting crushed either.
I'm fine with them getting crushed if it warrants it. This is football. Man up. Poor old Len Dawson was getting crushed every time he dropped back in that game.
How long was his career?
Well, whatever. He was drinking and smoking in the locker room. He had bigger problems than getting crushed by defensive linemen
than the hits. Yeah, I mean, if we had MS Paint, maybe I'd be able to visualize it better. But right now, I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around this one.
I think this is a good idea. I like this one.
Quick break to tell you about our friends over at Draft. It's Draft or Draft.com. Draft in your app store. Go check it out. Great way to play fantasy football. We've been doing this for a few months over here at PFF, playing our full season fantasy leagues that are best ball leagues. So you draft your team and then you just leave it. So if you have injuries, you have waiver wire that you don't have to worry about. They'll grab your best players every single day. And now, Sam, I know you're trying to get into the NBA again, so I assume you'll be playing some NBA games, whether it's jumping into some full season leagues or head-to-head drafts, 3-person drafts. New games start every few minutes. And we're giving you guys an offer where you guys can get a free $3 game once you make your first deposit. It's over at draft.com or draft in your app store. Go and check it out. I think I might dabble into the NBA stuff a little bit more. What about you?
Well, I need to learn who the players are first before I start trying to draft them. I think that's probably a sound starting point.
So maybe watch a few games, weeks, and get into it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's not just, it's NFL, it's NBA, NHL, MLB, even golf, and a whole bunch of different ways to play. So just get there now. Draft.com, draft in your app store. Promo code is PFF for your free $3 game. All right, we got another question. This is from a guy from New England.
Yeah, there you go.
The real England. Fix the replay system.
That's why you don't have fans. Just writing off whole areas of the world.
Anyone who's not American.
Yeah.
And all non-New Englanders.
Yeah.
Fix the replay system by not allowing a super slow speed playback. Instead, play them at half speed and make a determination from there. Austin Seferian-Jenkins lost the ball for a fraction of a second in real time. That was the Jets play that went from touchdown to touchback. But in slow motion replay, it lasted about 7 seconds. So put that in perspective again. He lost the ball for a fraction of a second in real time. The slow motion replay lasted about 7 seconds. Watch that replay in half speed, and it's a touchdown. Bring back a little human element.
You know what? I kind of like this.
Taylor's shaking his head. I don't know. Taylor, do you have we're going to get you on the mic here so you can really give your input, but I don't think you've earned it yet.
No.
So what?
Especially with withholding emails.
What are you shaking your head for? He is withholding emails.
No, he's not. I decided that was funny as well.
No, he's absolutely keeping the good emails.
I like this idea. The super slow-mo makes things look a lot worse than it actually is. And when you crank that up a little bit in terms of speed, it looks way better. You get a better idea of what's going on. I think the super slow-mo is kind of useful, and it's decent. You need to slow it down to some degree because you just can't figure out some of these things at real speed.
Honestly, I can't believe that refs get so much correct in real time. I'm amazed at some of the stuff that they get right.
The touchdown, that happened again this week. The guy that got tackled by his own guy and just kept on going. Was it Baltimore scored a touchdown or a return touchdown this week? Same deal. The guy got tackled in the middle of a kick return, but it was his own guy that took him down, gets up, runs on, and they didn't call that. I'm staggered that a guy would not call that. I would just assume he would default to saying
blow a whistle.
Tackle, blow the whistle. But they didn't. I'm amazed that they get as much right as they do, full speed, without, decent, good shots at this, just from where they're standing. But, I think that you've kind of gone overboard. When you're at the point where you can frame by frame super slow-mos and you're into split hundredths of a second that things are happening, it's too far. You've gone way past the point of actually determining differences in what's going on. I say I like this. I say slow it down a bit, not too much.
Yeah, I like it too. And he finishes it by saying, bring back a little human element. I would say just bring back some common sense, right?
Well, that's what, same deal. Same thing.
I'm just wording it differently. Bring back some common sense. And the other thing, too, I said, I'm not usually all for the Twitter masses and stuff like that, but I do think the one thing Twitter gets right, that social media gets right, catch, no catch, and stuff. It's like you go on Twitter. Like, if you crowdsource this ASJ touchdown, and it's like, is this a touchdown, is it not? Give me a little logic here, Twitter. And 92% are going to say it's a touchdown, so it's probably a touchdown. Let's not invent something new. I like it. Go half speed.
Yeah, I think it's a good one.
Thank you, Chris from Connecticut. New England comes through again. All right, hi, team. This Watson hype reminds me of RG3's rookie season. I have a theory that rookie quarterbacks should only be judged once they have attempted at least 750 passes, excluding the preseason. Interesting to know your take on this. Thanks, Assad. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, so I think there's something to the idea that you can't judge a quarterback too quickly especially an unusual quarterback. So a guy like RG3, where it was all manufactured running and an option offense and all that kind of stuff they were doing in Washington.
Yeah, I think it's how things are happening sometimes.
So there's definitely something to saying you can't go overboard and crown the guy before the NFL has had a chance to work out how to defend that offense. But RG3 throws a spanner in the works because he ripped his knee to pieces at the end of that season. Then kind of things broke down in Washington, and they didn't want to run that offense again. So we don't really know what RG3 could have become. We don't know if the NFL would have figured him out anyway, would have figured that offense out anyway.
Yeah, when he tried to come back, he tried to play like Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Instead of playing
and that's where
like
your problems
RG3.
are. So not only are you coming back off a major knee injury, which could have done anything to his play going forward, but you're also dealing with a guy who doesn't want to play the way they were playing that was successful. So you don't know what to make of that. You don't know whether the NFL would have figured out that original offense and that original guy or not. But yeah, I do think that there's something to the idea that you can't judge anybody off one season. I don't really care if it's a quarterback or anything else. You need to give the league time to figure out a guy, and then you need to see if that sustains more than a season.
Now, coming from PFF terms, the Watson hype. Now, if you take away his first game, his grade's probably about middle of the pack, middle of the NFL type. His stats are off the charts, leading the league in touchdown passes. But the perspective on that is you've got that Sunday night game against Kansas City where he's just chucking jump balls down there. I mean, he had a lot of stat patters in that game. I'm not trying to take away from what he's done. My point is the PFF grade is not telling me Deshaun Watson's exceptional. It's telling me he's been a good rookie aside from the tough situation he was put in week one, in relief, under pressure nonstop. So he's been a good rookie. Last year, the perspective told me that Dak Prescott has been a good rookie, and Carson Wentz was off to a good start and then settled down. I like the idea, but yeah, I mean, bigger sample sizes are always better, right?
Well, as much as the hype is huge around Deshaun Watson, the grades say that both Dak Prescott and RG3 were better rookies, at least so far from what we've seen. Maybe he will continue over the year and get even better, but the hype or the grades at least say that those two guys had better rookie seasons.
We got breaking news over here.
Breaking news.
I finally got
you got an email?
I finally got an email.
Wow. What does it say?
Sent to me.
Let's read this one out. This is Steve's email that he got after begging twice.
I didn't beg. I knew that there was something fishy going on right here.
Come on. What does your email say?
From Billy Kennedy.
I got that right now.
You did not just get this.
Minute.
Are people listening live?
I don't think so, because we're not broadcasting live.
I don't think that's possible. This one's for Steve, the clear smartest guy on the podcast. Being a Falcons fan, I can all but feel like I'm just reading this blind here. Is there anything bad going on?
Who knows? We'll find out. That's what the cough button was for.
Thank you. I get a tally.
Oh, you get one, and you're
we have a tally of emails for Sam versus emails for Steve.
And Steve now has one. There you go.
You just wrote a number one like we're not going to add more tallies.
Like there's no more tallies going on. That's your one. Anyway, keep going. Read your email.
Being a Falcons fan, I can all but feel like we've been getting the worst breaks possible so far this year. I was hoping you could shed some light on a couple next-level stats and compare them to league average or historic data. I have basically two complaints. Matt Ryan is getting an absurd number of passes picked off that hit wide receivers' hands first. Stupid Austin Hooper ruins the final drive versus the Dolphins. And number two, the defense is getting a crazy amount of automatic first down penalties on plays where we make third down stops or picks. I believe We did this twice on each Dolphins scoring drive. So do you have numbers that support these things are happening at a crazy rate, or do I just have my Homer glasses on?
I like it.
Thanks,
Your
Billy.
email is putting you on the spot. It's perfect.
So I'm the smartest guy on the podcast, but I have not had time to research these numbers. So I certainly can't answer them here live on the podcast. I'll have to take a break, fire up the Excel spreadsheet. I will say I don't think Matt Ryan's having bad interception luck. That's one thing I can pull out. I have him with 2 turnover-worthy plays and 5 interceptions so far this season. But I will say, Billy, my super fan, and I appreciate you writing in, that offsets last year where Matt Ryan only had 7 interceptions and had something like 14 or 15 turnover-worthy plays. He had good interception luck last year, and now it's reverted back a little bit this year.
I mean, it's not terrible. He's only had 10 passes dropped, period, which is 14th in the league.
Pure drops. So one like Hooper, we're not going to.
No, I mean,
we're not calling that a drop.
It's more unlucky if those are bouncing into the hands of defensive backs for interceptions, but still, there are guys out there, letting their quarterbacks down more than Matt Ryan is being let down.
For good perspective, though, too, that Matt Ryan late game interception was one where it's essentially a bang-bang play at the catch point. The cornerback gets his arm in there. For the most part, we're going to zero that. We're going to say it's not necessarily a bad play by the quarterback. It's more of it's a good play by the defender. And it's a 0 because the majority of those passes simply fall incomplete. The fact that it became intercepted was unlucky. So that would be one of those unlucky interceptions for Matt Ryan.
Has that lifted your spirits now that you have an email?
Yeah, I still think you guys set that whole thing up, which is fine. I know you guys are up to something, which is fine. Are we done with the Watson question too?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So now we're back to reality.
Yeah.
Per usual, these questions are for Sam because of course they are. I do not go to the doctors and ask the tall secretary for advice. I ask the smartest person in the building. I mean, you're not even fooling anyone with this anymore.
Oh, I wish it was me, but it's not. That's what the people think, Steve.
I'm just your tall secretary.
Apparently. Look, I can't help that that's how you come across. I'm doing my best here
Billy
to drag
from
you
Atlanta
up
knows.
To this kind of level.
Billy from Atlanta knows I'm the smartest guy on the podcast. We need more Billies listening, apparently. All right, your buddy's questions. Since the Bengals switched offensive coordinators in Week 3, they've played like a completely different team on both sides of the ball, almost pulling out a win in overtime against Green Bay, destroying Cleveland in a game many picked the Browns to win, and beating the ever-efficient Bills. Is Bill Lazor to thank for this complete turnaround, or did something else change? Offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, they've definitely done better at papering over or hiding the offensive line. They've got the ball out of his hands quicker. They've tried to not expose those guys as much as they were in the past. But Green Bay aren't as good as people thought they would be. Cleveland, it turns out, are really bad. People just thought they were better right up until that kind of time. And Buffalo was kind of in a downpour.
And Buffalo's always kind of been fool's gold, right? Like we don't
to an
expect
extent,
them.
yeah. But also games in the pouring rain are always screwy,
I agree with that. I will say this. I'll be a little cryptic here because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, and I'll use the whole, talking to people, league sources.
You breaking out sources?
I'm going to use all that stuff. When you look at the way Cincinnati was calling plays early in the season, either Week 1 against Baltimore, Week 2 against Houston, I feel like they didn't have this great feel for, here's what Houston's playing, here's their base coverage, here's a coverage beater for that particular coverage. They just didn't have that connection. And a lot of coordinating is simply, hey, here's what they're going to play, here's how we're going to beat it. They just weren't calling plays that were going to win. All right, that's how I'll position it. So I do think something did change in that regard. And Bill's got Andy Dalton playing a little bit better. I have to ask the second part?
I think so. But just to start, to go back on that last one, for the first 3 weeks of the season, Andy Dalton's average time to throw is 2.5 seconds, 2.54. They've taken 0.3 off that since then to 2.24, which doesn't sound like much. I mean, 0.3 of a second.
Well, that's massive. That's the difference between first and 15th.
Yeah, that moves you from middle of the pack to the fastest guy in the league in
right.
terms of getting rid of the ball. So that's kind of the change you're dealing with there in Cincinnati.
And that's more what Andy Dalton is. Right? I mean, he's always one of those.
That's what he should have been. That's what he's been all before. He's always been one of the quickest guys at getting the ball out of his hands before. I'm not entirely sure why they weren't to begin this season when they rolled into the year knowing that the offensive line was going to be a problem.
Right. You would think do everything
more than ever. This would be the year
everything
where you would
go
fast
to protect them. Before we get into this Conor McGregor question, got to pay some bills and Remind you guys that this episode is brought to you by PredictionMachine.com. Prediction Machine, a new generation in sports analytics where they simulate the game 50,000 times before they're actually played. Make better picks with proven data-driven analysis. Subscribe at PredictionMachine.com today and earn a $5 credit that could be used towards the purchase of any package. All right, your Superfan Part 3 over here.
He leads off with serious question, which I don't think it is, to be honest.
Well, let's see.
But anyway, go ahead.
Conor McGregor has taken the world by storm as one of the toughest SOBs on the planet, and I have a theory. Everything about Conor's success made perfect sense once I pieced it all together. You're both from Ireland, and the best in the world at what you do. Sam, do you secretly train Conor McGregor in your free time?
So I don't, but I do have a very tenuous Conor McGregor connection. One of those 7 degrees of separation deals. So I used to play on the same team with a guy called David Mullins, who was training in SGB. SGB, is that right? SBG, Straight Blast Gym, SBG, which is Conor McGregor's gym in Ireland. And he was doing sports psychology with those guys.
You do train with him?
No, not really. I trained with a guy who trained with him. But he was doing their sports psychology, SBG's sports psychology. So years before anybody had any idea who this guy was, he was telling me that this guy, Conor McGregor, is legit. He's going to be really good. He's going to, be UFC champion one of these days. This was way before anybody had any idea who he was.
So you got the heads up.
Yeah. So I don't train him, but I've trained with a guy who's trained him, if that makes sense.
So that would explain why you're the best in the world. And I assume...
Apparently.
What's your buddy's name over here?
Gary.
I assume Gary means that you're the best Irish analyst in the world.
I think just,
NFL.
Yeah.
Best Irish analyst in the world that's moved to Cincinnati. I think you've got that down. So
yeah, nailed it.
We're on the same page here. Can you pronounce this guy's name?
Can I pronounce this guy's name?
Mikkel, I would just say Goldberg, but...
Yeah, Goldberg. Goldberg.
Mikkel Goldberg.
There's a J in there. That's always...
The J threw me off because I was just going to roll with Goldberg, even though it's Goldberg. Either way, Mikkel asks a pretty good question, and the last one I think we're going to wrap up. By the way, we're going to have another segment with Mike Renner and Will Montgomery discussing injuries, more than just stuff, injuries and battling through injuries and general offensive line play, so stay tuned for that. But Mikkel asks, a quick fix-ish for conventional stats. Catches behind the line of scrimmage don't count as pass stats, so your shovels, your screens, your volleyball passes, etc. I think that's a fair way to do it.
Is it? Those are passes too. Those are people too, Steve.
No,
running backs out of the backfield.
I think the shovels I would be ready to just not do it. Screens, like you have to coach a quarterback how to throw a screen. Now, ultimately, every quarterback should be able to execute a screen. But you have to tell them, like, hey, you got to draw the defense in, and the timing needs to be right. The stupid shovel pass is a tap. You just tap the ball.
So what do you make that, a running attempt?
I've seen other people do that. I've seen other people take that out of stats and call it a running attempt. It is essentially the same thing. The difference between tapping the ball forward to a guy on a jet sweep and catching it and handing it off, it's the same exact thing as far as how the defense has to play it and all that stuff. A screen is a pass that needs to be played. So I can understand, and plus a screen... Like, you don't want to throw, like, a wide receiver screen above a guy's head so he has to jump up and catch it. Like, there is something to at least making that throw, making a running back screen, making a wide receiver screen. So those I probably wouldn't throw in there. The shovel passes, the tap passes, or the shovel passes, I would. The shovel pass is like that's the one where you've got an option behind you to shovel it back, and now they're having the H-back become the option in front of you. So it's essentially a triple option. It's Navy, except you're pitching it forward instead of back.
Yeah, and if you pitch it in one direction, it becomes a pass play.
Right, and if you pitch it the normal way, it's a run. So that one I would be fine with saying that's a run. Everything about it is a run. The defense is playing the run, and then the tap pass is a run as well. I mean, they're playing a jet sweep.
Well, those are silly. Like that shouldn't count as a pass attempt because you're literally just stopping the ball as it comes back from the center, and then the guy on the jet motion catches it out of the air. Like you've literally just stopped it. You haven't even maintained possession of it long enough to throw it back to anybody.
You just stopped it.
You just put your hands up and stopped the thing flying back 10 yards.
So I like it. So traditional screens, fine. I mean, they've been a part of the game forever. It does take an actual throw of the ball.
Yeah, it is a pass.
Right.
The other ones aren't necessarily passes.
The designed shovel and the tap pass, I'm fine with essentially calling those runs and going that way with it. So.
Okay, you've kind of sold me on that. I wasn't wild on it to begin with, but you've done a good job working that one through.
Is that all we have? No, seriously, how many other emails did you guys just hide?
Yeah, none. That was your only email.
That can't be true.
I think you'll find it
Just
is.
Billy from Atlanta?
Just Billy from Atlanta is president of the Steve fan club.
So I truly have no fans.
No, you have one fan. You have Billy from Atlanta.
Okay. And we couldn't completely even satisfy his question. I didn't have time to
you
research.
Billy from Atlanta who was so late with his question that you couldn't answer because you didn't have a chance to look at any of the numbers.
Well, thank you, Billy. We appreciate you listening.
So now you may well have turned off your only fan.
No, I like Bill. Billy's great.
Yeah, but you didn't answer his question.
I did. I said Matt Ryan has
you answered it, but you answered it badly.
In 5 interceptions.
I'm just saying, Billy asked you specific questions and you didn't give him the answers he was looking for. Well, maybe Billy is now going to go elsewhere for his expertise.
Maybe take your Homer glasses off, Billy, because I think you did exaggerate a little bit.
Well, now you see, look, now you're just... This is why you have one fan and now he's probably turned off because
maybe I'm just
going
to turn heel because if nobody's going to be on my side.
How do you turn heel in a podcast closet? What's the move?
I don't know. You guys are working on it.
Did you get up and sling the avalanche chair at somebody?
I don't know. I'll do something on Instagram. Check out our Instagram account, Pro Football Focus. Sam did his push-ups the other day.
Yeah, 20 of them in like 3 attempts because you couldn't get all of it into one video.
That's how Instagram stories work, Sam.
It feels like he could have taken the video and some other mechanism and then, I don't know, done something with it then.
Okay, that'll do it for us today, Sam. We got no more questions. You have no push-ups to do. Good job not dropping the football today. Since
Didn't have a football. That'll help.
One.
Yeah.
We've got Mike Renner and Will Montgomery coming up. If you guys haven't heard their first 2 10, 15-minute discussions, really good stuff a couple weeks ago about PFF grading and how Will got involved last week, all about pass protection, the great Peyton Manning, and how he helped him out. So go check out those archived PFF mailbags if you haven't heard them. But let's check out Mike and Will and see what they have to talk about this week.
What is up? We're back talking with Will Montgomery. I'm Mike Renner. We're going to be doing something a little bit different than solely offensive line play. We know you guys loved our talk about pass protection a week ago, but we're going to talk about, in honor of Celtics forward Gordon Hayward having a pretty gruesome ankle injury, we're going to talk about injuries with Will Montgomery here because he had his own pretty gruesome ankle injury that he actually sent me the x-ray of this morning, and it doesn't look pretty. How did that one happen, Will?
Right. Well, I'm sure you wanted to see like the 8 screws and the big metal plate, the titanium plate,
yes,
and the wires holding my ankle together. You know,
it looks like you have a comb just like stuck into the side of your leg.
Well, like this Hayward injury, for the basketball injury. For some reason, all my buddies sent me like the still image, like, hey, Will, I'm sure you're not going to like watch the video, but here's the still shot, so you can have to look at it anyways.
Did you go grab your ankle? Did it give you some like flashbacks?
Well, it did give me some flashbacks, unfortunately. My last career NFL play with the Chicago Bears, we were running kind of a man scheme where the left guard pulled around and I was at center on a back block, and our left tackle, who was still the left tackle of the Bears, got me with some friendly fire. He was going down there to cut off his 3 technique and threw the old cut block right into my left ankle while I was engaged. And so my ankle zigged and my body zagged, and that was all she wrote on that one. And surprisingly, I felt like a pop. I'm like, okay, that's probably not good that I just felt and heard like a pop. But sometimes, other weird ligaments stretch or whatever, and you get up and it's no big deal. But this time, I'm like, oh boy, the pain didn't quite set in yet. So I got on a knee and I'm like, here we go. Hopefully I can do this. I tried to put weight on my left ankle and leg, and it felt like mush. It felt like I was stepping in quicksand. Literally zero support. I'm like, wait a minute, this is not good. So then I get back down and I try it again. I'm like, no, I cannot do this. So the trainers helped me off the field, and the whole time, the head trainer's like, can we just tape it up? Are you sure? You want to go back out there? And meanwhile, I'm about to puke because I think it's like a delayed set of pain coming on. And I'm like, no, I cannot go back out there. I literally can't even put any weight on it at all. They went back and x-rayed it and it was broken, and then they did some other tests, and they're like, and it's dislocated. So not only was the fibula, broken or fractured, it was the part where it was also dislocated. So, like I said earlier, they had to put a plate on it, screws on the fibula, and then a couple of wires basically wrapped around my ankle to close everything back up.
Yeah, I've sprained my ankle. I've shredded the ligaments probably about 3 or 4 times in my life because I played basketball all the time growing up. And every time I forget how much it hurts. It hurts really bad about 10 minutes after you've done it, and I can't even imagine actually breaking it, how much more that hurts, because I know the pain really sneaks up on you when you just sprain it, just tearing the ligaments. Well, but breaking the bone itself probably adds another level that I don't want to.
You know what they always say? They say if you just have a break, that's actually better than even just like a regular bad high ankle sprain, because the broken bone will heal in, I don't know, whatever it is, 4 to 6 weeks. But that sprain, some guys who just have a simple high ankle sprain, they say it will almost take them a year before they're fully even back from that, let alone my dislocated ankle is technically a sprain. It's just the worst possible sprain because now it's just like not attached really.
Yeah, there's no tendons holding it back together. Yeah. Let's not talk about gruesome injuries anymore, but more talk about how common are guys playing through injuries. You said you told me earlier that you had to list all your injuries when you retired to the NFL for disability. And how common is it to be playing with a shoulder that doesn't feel, or a hand, some fingers that might be broken? How common are guys not at 100% out there on the field?
Well, it's very common. The only time you might be 100% is week 1 at training camp. Now, I remember my earlier days of training camp when we still had the true two-a-days, and I don't even know, looking back on that, how I actually made it through those practices, especially, starting in 2006 with the John Fox era with the Carolina Panthers. But, since they went to the kind of the one-a-days or the two-a-days, but one of them just like a walkthrough special teams practice, training camp really isn't as bad as it used to be. But once you get, especially now, we're getting into week 7, 8, everybody has a problem. Everybody has an owie. It's just a matter of how you manage it, whether it's, the cold tub. Sometimes guys will do the contrast, like they would go in the cold tub, then the hot tub, and do that on a couple-minute basis for 15 or 20 minutes. There is big in a lot of guys are getting the massage therapy. Earlier in my career, I didn't get extra massages. I was like, I don't want to pay for massages. Are you kidding me? When I was in my cheap earlier couple years in my career. But in my last 3 or 4 years, I was getting sometimes 2 massages a week, and I was like, I don't care how much money this costs. Like, I need a full body rub down in order to play the next week. The teams also bring in chiropractors, so you'll see them twice a week, and also on game day, there's like a line. There'll be a list of 20 guys to see the chiropractor like 3 hours before the game in the locker room. Obviously all about the stretching. Something that I probably could have done better, which I didn't, it was eat healthy when I was playing. I just, for me to maintain, 300 plus pounds, I had to supplement my diet with pizza and wings and beer. So I'm sure that probably didn't help me to recover a whole lot.
Yeah.
Sleeping is a big thing. I was big on getting 7 or 8 hours of sleep, which some guys don't. So not only are they, sleeping through the 8 a.m. run install on Wednesday mornings, but I'm sure their body isn't recovering as it could. And sometimes when guys are out there, they'll take a little pill or injection, or you ever heard of Toradol? You have heard of that? So basically, if you take a Toradol, I've only taken a few of those, but you really don't feel the pain until mid to late week, the next game week. So if you take a Toradol on Sunday, you don't feel your, post-game owies until like Wednesday or Thursday. So all of a sudden Thursday hits, you're like, oh man, am I sore from practice, or is that the soreness coming from last Sunday finally hit?
It just all builds up to Thursday.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the more you read about that, you hear the negative side effects to your liver and whatever else. So I some guys take it weekly. I only took it when I needed it. So
yeah, how common is someone taking pain pills to get through a game? Were there a lot of guys in your locker room who had to do it just to play because of how many injuries they've had built up?
Well, I would say almost most guys are on some kind of, ibuprofen or
just
whatever
anti-inflammatory.
It is.
Makes sense.
Some kind of anti-inflammatory. A lot of guys are on a regimen of that. And then I would say at least 50% of guys are probably taking that weekly Toradol. I'm probably a little bit more of a tree hugger than most, so I didn't want to pop those pills unless I absolutely needed them. But you see a lot of guys, earlier in my career, they would just pop them out like candy. Now you kind of have to sign a waiver, but they would still kind of pop them out like candy.
Yeah.
So I guess they would try to claim if your liver fails in 20 years, then they're not liable, even though you've been popping them for, however many games your whole career.
So you said you were playing with injuries basically weekly. Were there any that you played through that you could tell this is hurting my performance, or is it usually, do you know, if you're playing through it, it's painful, but you're still playing at basically a level that's close to what you'd say is 100% level? Or is there any time you're like, I'm actually hurting the team with, how injured I am and it's affecting my play?
Well, yes and yes. When I injured my wrist in the 2013 season, actually I tore a major ligament in my wrist. That was the supporting ligament. So basically for the last 2.5 years of my career, I basically played with a cast on my wrist. Now I could still do most things that I needed to do, and I guess I have to have PFF back it up, but I still believed I graded in the upper half of the centers over that time. But I still knew, personally, I couldn't torque a guy, or I couldn't do some of the things I would normally do with my left arm those last couple of years. Although I still felt like I was helping the team, there were still a few things I felt like I couldn't do. And, with my knees as well, unfortunately playing center, you're in the middle of a lot of chaos. So whether it was Trent Williams at left tackle, throwing a guy into my knee, or, at the right tackle at times, it was either Jamal Brown or Tyler Columbus or somebody else throwing a guy into my right knee. Then I would kind of go to the sideline and my knee would be wobbly. And I remember there was one game in particular with we were playing against the Cleveland Browns. I think it was actually Kirk Cousins' first career start. And, Trent or somebody threw a guy into my knee, and I was like, uh-oh. I was like, I'll have to see how this next play goes. So we go in the huddle. We call the play. We walk to the line of scrimmage. As I'm walking to the line, my knee kind of gives out, and I almost fall down walking to the line of scrimmage. Kirk looks at me. He says, Will, are you okay? And I kind of look at him. I said, I don't know. Let's just see how this goes. So we were running zone right. I snapped the ball back. I took one step, and then I had to stop. And I just continued walking off to the sideline. And the guys were kind of joking at me like I just walked off into the sunset. And some other guys were, why didn't you just take a knee? It would have been easier to sub in, the next guy in. But I said, I really don't like to be the guy that just takes a knee and gets help off or gets carted off. But, those knees, unfortunately, I've banged up each of my knees 3 or 4 times. And it's also funny when I'm laying in my bed at night, my knee will just, like I'll lay it off the side, and then all of a sudden it'll just turn like the way it's not supposed to turn. So like imagine like a wobbly chair that's not screwed in all the way, and that's how my knees were. But the trainers were able to put together this figure 8 tape job. They essentially would tape my knee back together until the ligaments tightened back up.
Tape your knee until the ligaments tighten back up. That sounds pretty that sounds pretty rough, I'll say.
Well, and there's one more pretty interesting story, too. When I was on field goal protection, playing either the guard or the tackle on field goal protection, that used to be a really thankless job because you would have a guy over each shoulder. So it would be like a Vince Wilfork on one shoulder and another Vince Wilfork lookalike, both smashing you. But behind them also would be these 260-pound linebackers pushing them. So it's essentially 4-on-1. And I'm trying to remember what season it was. I think it was maybe the 2012 or 13 season. And I was playing either the guard or the tackle position, and those 4 guys pushed me back, but I got low pad level, so I was low. They pushed me back, and they forced me into the splits. So I can't do the splits normally. But with about 1,000 pounds of pressure on me, forced me into the splits. I ended up pulling a groin and a hamstring. I'm like, you know what? This is BS. So I emailed D. Maurice Smith, like on the plane ride home. And he says, hey, Will, that's a good point. Maybe we shouldn't allow those double pushers come to the competition committee next offseason.
No more.
So I did. I put together some film clips of people getting destroyed with the double pushers, and then I put together some film clips of people blocking field goals not using the double push technique. So one of your rule changes a handful of years ago was in part because of me going to the competition committee bitching about the double pushers on field goal.
Yeah, you can't. That got called, I think.
So what is that input called, anyways? And when you're grading the game, double push penalty.
The penalty.
Like
I'm not. It's called maybe leveraging or something. I don't know. Yeah, you can't do it though anymore. I think didn't the Patriots get called on that against the Jets, or was it?
They got called for that, I believe, 1 or 2 years after I helped get that rule installed. I got a little smile with myself.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was you. That's great. I do want to go back to something you touched on where you said you didn't want to be the guy who came off on the cart. You were going to play through that injury. How common is that? What's the culture like in the locker rooms that you were in terms of someone has an injury? Are they expected to play through it, or are there times where you can tell it's impacting a guy's performance and other players on the team are like, hey man, like, don't play through this. You're not the same guy out there.
Well, I would say 99% of football players are, tough, strong dudes. So they want to stay in. They're taught to stay in. Unfortunately, they stay in to their own detriment. I've played next to guys who, I know the concussion talk is big right now, whether it's my guard or one of my tackles that kind of is dinged up, and I'll make a mic point and they're just looking at me like they're seeing butterflies or something. I'm like, we better keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
And even myself, I believe I've gotten a couple of dings. And then, my last year with the Bears, I was, got dinged on a play, and I had to look at my left guard, Matt Slauson at the time. I'm like, hey, watch me, make sure I'm making the right mic points, because I'm a little bit dinged myself. You'll occasionally, this is very rare, but you'll occasionally see a guy do the other thing where he is injured. He'll almost pretend to be healthy so he can get his game day dress bonus, and then about a couple plays in, come out of the game.
Really?
So you'll see guys who are injured and play that shouldn't play, and then you'll see injured guys, pretending to be healthy, so they dress just to get the dress bonus. So it kind of happens both ways. But a lot of these contracts these days, they'll throw a couple $100,000 in dress bonuses. So if you are injured and cannot dress out for a couple games, you're going to miss out
on
$25,000 to $50,000 a game because you rolled an ankle or something.
Was that ever you? Were you ever one of those guys who came back in for the dress bonus?
No, unfortunately, whenever I was
you're always too serious.
I was always worried about somebody, stealing my job or something. So whether I was hurt, injured, otherwise, I was always in there. And those pregame warm-ups are kind of funny. I would sometimes, over the course of my 10-year career, I actually saw 3 or 4 guys legitimately get hurt in pregame warm-ups. So then I believe it's like 90 minutes before the game. If you get hurt or something, it's just too bad. You can't sub somebody else because they submit the dress list, an hour and a half or so before the game. So, there was one game where we had a lineman go down in warm-ups, so then you only have 6 available old linemen to play the rest of that game. And if, oftentimes you'll see 2 linemen go down. So if 2 linemen would have gone down in that game, then you're throwing a tight end in that tackle or something.
Yeah, that was the Falcons.
I'm curious to know if that's ever happened. But
the Falcons had to put Levine Toilolo at tight end, or at right tackle. It didn't work out well for them. They lost that game, I remember. One last thing I wanted to touch on. You said you had, touched on in the beginning, you said you had that list of, did you ever find your whole list that you had to submit to the NFL disability with all your injuries?
I did find the whole list, and it's extensive. It's a front and back single-space list and detailing. Looking at it, I'm wondering how I'm even walking around right now.
I was going to say, how many separate injuries are listed there on?
I say at least 20. I mean, I've sprained each of my knees 3 or 4 times each. There's the fingers, like I was telling you earlier. But my fingers are really annoying because sometimes I'll stick my hand in my pocket to get my keys out, and the finger will go the wrong direction, and I'll be cussing out my car, or I'm about to go somewhere. I'll be like, MF, because my fingers will go the wrong way. Or I'll take my 2-year-old daughter to the park and catch her, at the bottom of a slide, and my thumb will bend back the wrong direction. I'm like, dang it, Chris Jenkins from the Carolina Panthers, 2006 back block, or just things like that unfortunately are part of my life. And I was also mentioning to you, how when I saw the doc, I'm like, hey, my shoulder is kind of been bothering me like the last 6 years or so. What's up with that? He says, yes, Will, you have a separated AC joint. I'm like, oh, no wonder it hurt whenever I had to put my luggage in the overhead compartment there. So there's a lot of things, unfortunately, that get injured when you play in the NFL.
And I feel really bad now for complaining that my ankles get sore sometimes and my knees swell up when I play basketball. So thank you for the time, Will. Thank you for breaking that down for us. I hope that some of those injuries heal. Hope you can still walk in 30 years here now. But
I can still walk, but that's why I try not to be too harsh on these guys, because a lot of them are playing through pain. They're playing through injuries, and it is a tough sport, especially when you're battling all those injuries.
Thanks, guys. Really good stuff as always, and that'll do it for us. Podcast number 3 of the week. Don't forget, 4 big episodes every single week here on the PFF podcast. If you're a new listener, hit that subscribe button. Be with us all along the way. Got a lot of good stuff every single week. And don't forget, if you're looking to grab some PFF products, we've got Edge and Elite. Edge is the little guy, but an awesome one, over at profootballfocus.com/PFF-offers. That is the way you get Edge for the cheapest. And then PFF Elite, our top package that we're giving away for free once a week to a lucky listener who leaves a 5-star review over on iTunes. Don't forget to leave your email address or a Twitter account so we can get in touch with you if you guys win. So go ahead and check that out. Sam, tell us, what is the new stuff we keep adding to Elite recently?
Still, game-by-game grades, and the ability to get that monthly is the big thing. You can try it. You can go in for a monthly subscription of PFF Elite, see if it's going to make you all your money back in DFS, if it's going to dig you out of that hole you're in, and then upgrade to the big thing.
That's right. We didn't have monthly earlier in the season, but it is back and was a big hit last year. So thanks again to everybody for listening. Thanks to all of Sam's fans who write in emails. Thanks to my fans who like to stay quiet and just take in. There's multiple fans out there. I know you guys are out there. Thank you for taking in the podcast. We'll talk to you guys next time.